Hey guys, Dantix here, bringing you some more Marvel Rivals news. Today, talking about the leaked roster. All the characters the devs are working on were data mined from the alpha game code, so we have a pretty good idea of what's coming. Take most of this with a grain of sugar though, as if you let your guard down, you might be disappointed.
I nicked it when you let your guard down for that split second.
Most of this information can change before release, but take a look at this. The full roster of 39 characters coming to Marvel Rivals, with plans of continued additions after. We've played 19 of these characters in the alpha, and I've got guides to all those below. We have yet to see the other 20 though. But don't worry, in this video I'll run through them, their abilities and more. The numbers you see next to their names were data mined with them, and the miner is convinced that these are based on the order they were worked on. So the Hulk was up first, and Iron Fist is probably in the earlier stage of development. That means the Human Torch may be the furthest along development wise, so let's take a look at his skills and abilities first, then run through the others, timestamps below. The Human Torch is most likely going to be always airborne like Iron Man and Storm, just based on his abilities and, well, the fact that he's always flying in the comics. Fire Cluster seems to be his left click, and like you'd expect, it sends out a fireball. However, you can split it somehow, making it hit a wider area. Holding down left shift makes him rapidly ascend, which would be useful to dodge ultimates and projectiles, but also to set up his other abilities. With Blazing Blast, he launches a fireball at a targeted area to make a flame field. This may or may not damage enemies within it, but it will most likely be on right click. With Flaming Meteor, the Human Torch dives towards the ground, dealing damage to enemies and detonating the flame field's hit. You can already see a combo coming together. But that's not all. With Pyro Prison, you connect flame fields to form a firewall that deals continuous burning damage to enemies. Then we have Supernova, his ultimate, which makes him explode to damage all those within range. When activated, all flame fields will transform into flame tornadoes, dealing extra damage. It's unclear if the explosion is like Scarlet Witch's ultimate, a long and obvious cast time, or a more rapid explosion like Doctor Strange's ultimate, but I'm sure the damage will be adjusted accordingly. Finally, he has Burning Saw, which seems the same as Plasma Body on paper, but no doubt different somehow. The combo suggested is to ascend with Flame Body, drain enemies with Fire Cluster and Blazing Blast. By drain, they probably mean just take down their health, set up a flame field at choke points, and blockade enemies with Pyro Prison. Set up a flame field near enemies and detonate it with Flaming Meteor for massive damage. It seems like the Human Torch is a DPS or duelist hero all about area denial. With Blazing Blast, you can create spots that can be used later. Even if enemies don't take damage on it, they won't want to remain on them because they know you can do nasty things to them when they are. You most likely will have charges on this ability, as all his abilities want you to create multiple flame fields, then connect them with Pyro Prison. I imagine there will be a wall of fire linking both fields with that ability. Then if you use Flaming Meteor, you'll do some AoE damage to the people hit, and also if you land on a flame field, it will detonate for more damage. If they're linked by Pyro Prison, I imagine all the fields linked would explode even if they aren't hit. So good setup beforehand would be needed on this hero, especially because his ultimate, Supernova, causes the fields to transform into flame tornadoes, which I imagine will do the majority of the damage. Being able to fly is a double-edged sword for Iron Man and Storm right now, as it makes them targets, but with the Human Torch it gives him vantage to properly set up on choke points or even capture points. He also won't need to be in the open at all times, luring enemies in first before unleashing those abilities. This is very much going to be a defensive DPS character. Note that in his bio it mentions Dracula, which may hint at him becoming a playable character in the future. He also has a team up with Storm, storming Ignition. Storm can consume one of Human Torch's fire tornadoes into her ultimate to ignite the hurricane. Likewise, Human Torch can turn Storm's hurricane into a fiery hurricane with his ultimate, which will then enlarge and intensify any of his fire tornadoes caught in its path. It's unclear how exactly this will work, as both ultimates are sure to kill people just fine on their own, so having to coordinate and activate both at the same time may be a waste in most situations. You know exactly what Hawkeye is about without me reading his abilities. He's going to be a long-range marksman, but thankfully he does have some melee abilities. Skyward Leap seems like his passive. When you jump, you can press space to double jump in the direction of movement. Archer's Focus also seems like a passive. The longer you aim at a target, the more damage your left click will do. Left click being Piercing Arrow. It seems like a powerful long-range snipe that pierces through targets like Storm's Windblade. I imagine the right click is Blast Arrow, which shoots 3 explosive arrows on a cooldown, giving Hawkeye some AoE. Either that or Hypersonic Arrow, which is a more powerful piercing arrow. Reminds me of Storm's left click and right click, both piercing, with the right click doing more damage on a cooldown. Hawkeye's ability probably comes out differently, has a faster projectile or something to differentiate it. Crescent Slash is a melee ability to uppercut enemies into the air. This is probably intended for when someone gets a little too close and you need some space to shoot them or to breathe, as Hawkeye has no escape abilities. His ultimate is Hunter's Sight. It creates after images of enemies in his view, and damage done to them is transferred onto the enemy. Think Doctor Strange's ultimate at range without the stun. Since you're a sniper, it will mean your enemies will be easy pickings, as after images stay still and you can easily headshot them all. His left click no doubt has no reload animation, so Hunter's Sight will be as OP as your aim and positioning. Finally, he has another passive, it seems, Ronin's Slash, which deflects incoming projectiles when you use your melee attack, making him the best sniper versus other snipers like Hela, as you can reflect their BS right back at them. I think he's desperately needed, as Hela was a menace in Alpha. The suggested combo is to whittle down enemies from afar with Hypersonic Arrow and Piercing Arrow, close in using Scarlet Leap, and unleash massive AoE damage with Blast Arrow. When enemies charge, repel them with a well-timed Crescent Slash, though I think it's more likely you'll simply stay at range until you need to Crescent Slash and run. Hawkeye will be a long-range DPS or duelist type hero. He works well with Black Widow, as they have a team up together, allied agents. When he uses his ultimate, she can see the after images as well, meaning double sniping fun. Not sure how I feel about facing 2 snipers in a game though. Like the description says, it seems Cloak and Dagger function as one character, fighting together. It's hard to guess just how they function from their abilities, but my assumption is that Dagger is your support, healing the team, and Cloak will be your damage option. In Dagger form, you have daggers that deal damage to enemies and heal allies who are near the enemy. This will most likely be on a left click, where Dagger Storm will be on right click. It sends out a volley of Light Force daggers, most likely on a cooldown. Then we have the ability to switch to Cloak with Shadow's Embrace. Switching deals damage around you, whereas hitting the same button again will activate Light's Embrace, healing those around you and switching to Dagger. Then we have Light Explosion, which heals allies around you and grants them a healing boost. But on the same button, in Cloak form, you'll deal damage around you and render enemies vulnerable. Cloak's left click is continuous damage to an enemy, which may function the same as Scarlet Witch's left click, but his right click is Dark Teleportation, which shrouds allies around Cloak in an AoE for a team sneak attack, as you can move with it. Their ultimate merges them both together, so it doesn't matter which form you're in. Then they dash forward twice, healing allies and damaging enemies along the path forward. I can't imagine Cloak and Dagger being a bad hero, simply because Dark Teleportation has the potential of being really good in coordinated competitive teams. Cloak your whole team and ambush your enemies. We've seen how good ambushing is on Doctor Strange, but that requires you all to squeeze through a small portal, a kill box really. This doesn't. Also, you can heal and damage as needed. I foresee a lot of players not liking this character, as switching between a larger set of abilities isn't for everyone. However, this character seems to have a lot of damage and incidental healing, which means you'll be damaging enemies but healing as a nice side effect. They will be classified as a support or strategist hero without a doubt. I personally wouldn't have thought Ultron would be made into a support hero, but here we are, and he seems like a very effective one. Algorithm Correction is a passive that allows him to slow his fall, meaning that unlike Iron Man, Ultron won't be permanently flying. His left click is a ray which unleashes a burning energy beam. Not sure if that is a sustained beam or a pulse, but I imagine it's kind of a hold it down over your target kind of sustained left click. It also seems to both damage enemies and heal allies based on how it works with his ultimate. Imperative Firewall summons drones to grant bonus health to allies within range, centered on himself, and the ally marked with Imperative Patch, so it does a burst around himself and another target, encouraging you to spread your Imperative Patch out to a target who will be in the middle of another group of allies. Most likely with a left shift, you can fly in the direction of movement and can enter free flight mode. So he can fly, but for a seemingly limited time, like Star-Lord. Imperative Patch, which we've mentioned before, commands a giant drone to follow an ally, constantly healing allies in its radius, healing the designated ally for more. Don't forget that the Firewall ability also pulses bonus health around the target that has the drone following them. It's unclear if the drone can be destroyed by enemies, but I imagine so. It may not be wise to center your attention on the frontline tank, but rather on allies who take secondary fire. Then heal your tank with your left click and Firewall. Rage of Ultron is his ultimate, and it summons Ultron drones to fire your left click to damage enemies or heal allies. It sounds like it'd be a very universally useful skill in teamfights unless the drones can be destroyed, then big AoE ultimates will be used after Ultron's to negate its effect. Ultron seems to be a very dedicated healer. You'll be spending most of your time healing rather than damaging enemies, as even if his left click does a lot of damage, he has no tools to let him kill faster. There will be strings on you, as you'll be the team's heal bot, though you'll be a fun one. It seems Moon Knight will be a ranged DPS of sorts, though the exact range is unclear as he relies on ricochet mechanics. To be honest, after the Moon Knight series, the character has left a bad taste in my mouth, so I hope Rivals redeems him. Lunar Kinesis is his passive, which is just a reminder text that his Crescent Darts and Moon Blade can bounce between enemies and anks. His left click is Crescent Dart and his right click is Moon Blade, both of which bounce like mentioned. No doubt his right click will have a cooldown and deal more damage. To fire an ank, you gotta use Ank Siphon, which places one down and that reveals and stuns enemies in range. So it looks like Moon Knight will counter Cloak and Dagger focused teams, or Loki's trying to get away. Lunar Chain is his movement ability, a grappling hook Batman style. Also his passive, Lunar Aura, is the same ability, reveal and stun invisible heroes around Moon Knight. So both his Ank and his body will be no-go areas for enemies. If having two ways to reveal targets wasn't enough, Moon Knight's ultimate does so as well. Age of Khonshu bombards enemies and reveals those pesky invisible heroes. Just like half the heroes in the game, he can glide as well by holding space, but he also has a double jump. It seems like Moon Knight will be a DPS you whip out to counter specific strats, though I have a feeling if tuned right, great placement of Anks and timing against grouped up enemies will make Moon Knight a powerful hero. Whenever you see ricochet mechanics, you have to keep an eye on them. Moon Knight does get a team up with Cloak and Dagger called Lunar Force. Cloak and Dagger can inject light and dark energy into Moon Knight or Blade to create a light and dark realm where Moon Knight and Blade can become invisible. And invisible Moon Knight doesn't seem as terrifying as it would be on Blade. This is a team up that actually changes how you can play, which is very interesting. An anti-invisible hero that can go invisible. Perhaps not unsurprising to many is that Squirrel Girl seems to be a ranged DPS, revolving around bouncing acorns off terrain. For those who don't know, she's a girl with the powers of a common squirrel, yet somehow she can beat gods. You can soon do the same. Burst Acorn seems to be her left click, and it fires a ranged acorn where you aim. However, it bounces off terrain and targets. It's unclear if it explodes just yet, though it does say burst in the name. So you can Captain America acorns to hit targets you couldn't otherwise. Her right click seems to be Squirrel Blockade, which imprisons the first enemy hit by an acorn that summons squirrel guards to the target. Imprison effect simply means they can't move for its duration. Left click seems to be Tail Bounce, which propels her upwards, letting her get some high ground or avoid ground-based ultimates. Mammal Bond reloads your burst acorns, but also lets you use an ability like Squirrel Blockade or Tail Bounce once without activating its cooldown. I'm fairly sure it won't apply to Squirrel Girl's ultimate, which is Unbeatable Squirrel Tsunami. Summon a horde of squirrels to charge forward, dealing damage while bouncing against structures. I can't wait to see what this looks like in game. I imagine a raging flood smashing against walls and redirecting. The suggested combo says, shoot bouncing burst acorns with the left click ability and skillfully use the terrain to wear down enemies on their must pass routes. Spot the chance when the enemy strays from the team to immobilize them with Squirrel Blockade, then coordinate with allies for a focus strike to take them down, which implies she wants to whittle away at enemies and use teammates to finish people off. So a sustained ranged DPS with bounce mechanics. Spray and pray like Junkrat. I wouldn't be surprised if the acorns function the same way. If that wasn't enough, Squirrel Girl gets a team up where she buffs up Rocket Raccoon. Mammalian Bond lets Squirrel Girl summon a squirrel for Rocket Raccoon. While the squirrel is on Rocket Raccoon, he can cast each of his abilities once at 0 cost and refresh his weapon magazine. Not sure exactly how that works, if it's a timing based thing or a limited button press thing, but getting out a faster BRB is extremely useful on Rocket. You'd be right to suspect Black Widow would be a ranged DPS, but it does seem like she's a sniper with not as many melee options as I thought she'd have. She's able to reveal positions of enemies, stun, and dash. Her left click is rapid fire, it fires her sniper in a less accurate burst. But if you want to be accurate, use straight shooter, which is her right click, aim down sights mode, which I'm sure you can fire with your left click while holding down that right click. You know exactly who that sounds like. Infrared detector lets your next bullet reveal enemies around its area for a short duration. Information as a sniper is critical, and I'm sure your team will appreciate it too. You can dash with Edge Dancer, but it also propels you upwards when you hit something, letting you get some distance from your target to get shots in. Or you can activate Shift again to Diving Strike, damaging and stunning enemies, most likely used to get away. That's the extent of her melee options. You'd want to then use a line dash, which ziplines Black Widow towards target destination. So at my count, that's 2 ways to disengage and get away, making Black Widow hard to lock down if you're a melee character. Her ultimate is Electroplasma Explosion. It seems like you can fire it off instantly or charge it, similar to Magneto's ultimate. However, it creates a field of plasma that slows enemies inside and damages them. Larger area and more damage the longer it's charged. Slowed enemies means more damage inside the field and easier headshots for you or an ally like Hawkeye. You know what else is easier? Just hitting that like button and subscribing. It takes you 2 seconds, but it means the world to me. No doubt charging it will be dangerous, as she probably announces it to the world like most heroes do when they cast their ultimates. So another ranged DPS. Hopefully she picks off nasty hellers. Hawkeye and Black Widow work well together. Allied Agents is their team up, and it lets Hawkeye share his Hunter's sight with Black Widow, enabling her to catch sight of and damage after images of enemies. Remember, when he activates it, all enemies on the map start producing after images for him. It now produces for her as well. So yes, expect some teams to have 2 snipers sitting back and pinging off hella. Venom seems like a melee DPS who can rightly ambush enemies and regenerate health. Alien biology lets him wall crawl and sprint, which I assume is just like Spider-Man. His left click attacks with tentacles, probably a whip in front of him rather than a ranged Groot-like Dalsim punch. You can dash with Frenzied Arrival, except you need to do it from a height as you damage enemies where you land, knocking them towards the landing point. So yes, sucking them in so you can follow up with Cellular Corrosion. Your right click, which will tentacle enemies in reach to slow them. If enemies can't snap out of the grab in time, they'll take damage, so I assume snapping out means walking a certain distance away from it. Venom's swing will let you swing forward once, most likely just like Spider-Man, but he gets 3 charges. It's unclear how many Venom will get or how it will function differently. But so far, you can swing, then follow up with Frenzied Arrival to begin the pain. His passive is Symbiotic Resilience. You get bonus health as you take damage. The lower his health, the greater the bonus health regenerated. No idea how this works exactly, but sustained damage will be less effective on him, and high burst damage will be more effective. His ultimate is Feast of the Abyss. It burrows him underground for free movement, making him untargetable. After a duration or by pressing the left click, you devour your enemies above and generate bonus health. No idea if this is an instant kill to offset needing good aim and timing, but it seems like it can be used to get away or to turn the tides, as well as being great offense. Venom has a lot of ways to get in and get out, making him a very tricky movement-based melee DPS. He can wait on walls for the perfect time to drop in and pick off enemies, similar in that way to Spider-Man, but with his own twist. Venom also gets a team-up Symbiote Bond. Venom shares part of his symbiotes with Spider-Man or Penny Parker, activating their symbiote abilities. Spider-Man or Penny Parker can convert the symbiotes to explosive spikes that inflict harm on nearby enemies and relentlessly drive them back, meaning they both get extra damage and knockback effects on a new skill, though I don't think I want 2 tricky movement-based melee DPSs on one team, as they're going to be off doing their own thing while the team clashes. You had to have known Thor was going to make an appearance in Marvel Rivals, but in what form? It's unclear if he's a tank or DPS, though the lack of ways to mitigate damage lead me to believe DPS, and a lack of movement leads me to believe tank. He's a melee at any rate, but can consume Thor Force to become a ranged for a limited time, though the exact range is unknown. Thor Force is his passive, and after using any ability, casting Mjolnir Bash grants 1 point of Thor Force, which you can consume with the Awakening rune to enter Thor's awakened state, granting bonus health and enhancing Mjolnir Bash. This must be the form we see in the MCU, among other places. So while charging your ultimate, you're also charging your awakened state, giving Thor 2 ultimates of sorts. Mjolnir Bash on left click strikes enemies in melee range, but when awakened, it shoots lightning arc waves at range. Not sure if these bounce on targets, are long range lightning arc, or a splash of it in a cone shape, but you'll be doing more damage. Hammer Throw is on right click and it throws Mjolnir, only for it to return to you. I imagine doing damage going out and coming back, so moving or positioning yourself right to hit the most amount of people on its return will be key. Lightning Realm summons lightning around you and restores Thor Force based on the number of enemies it hits. It seems like the best way to gain Thor Force, so it's encouraging you to be in the middle of the pack. You have one movement ability too with Storm Surge. Hold the button to spin Mjolnir before dashing forward and knocking back enemies. The fact that he has one slow movement ability that functions like a wrecking ball makes me think tank more than DPS, but like I mentioned, it's hard to tell. God of Thunder is his ultimate and soars him upwards and smites the ground after charging, inflicting damage on enemies within range. I figure this is like Magneto's ultimate, except it doesn't throw anything. It propels him at your target instead, making Thor a must kill while he's charging in the air. Now there's some information about chronoviums that was mined in the data, but we don't know much on that yet, so I'll avoid talking about it in this video. Thor also has a team up with Storm and Captain America. Thor infuses Thor Force into Storm or Captain America, granting them an electrifying enhancement, most likely just increasing their damage. Thor seems to want to be in enemies' faces, with only one way to get in or out of fights. As a DPS, he isn't going to have the options of faster melee characters like Magic, Black Panther, or Spider-Man. If he's a tank, he'll want to be there anyway, dealing damage until transforming or using God of Thunder. Either way, he sounds very flashy. I'm happy with the direction they've took Mr. Fantastic after absolutely spitting on him in the MCU by having Wanda instant spaghetti him. He'll be a melee tank in the same fashion as Groot, as in he can hit at range but has a maximum reach. He also has ways to protect his team and himself. His passive is Elastic Strength. Skills generate elasticity, boosting attack power. Reaching full elasticity triggers an inflated state that restores health and boosts even more damage. So he wants to be constantly using his abilities in order to self-heal and dish out the pain. Stretch Punch is his left click, and I imagine it's very similar to Groot's. Distended Grip seems to be his right click, and it extends his arms out to wrap an enemy. When they're entangled, press left click to yank another enemy, knocking them up against each other. I'm not sure how exactly that translates to gameplay, but I imagine you grab an enemy, then you can grab onto another to slam them together. Might be hard to get off if you need to manually target, but if it's lock-on targeting, this can be a very disruptive ability. Flexible Elongation is a dash. You select a target and dash towards them, dealing damage to enemies along the way and granting bonus health to allies. Seems like a great way to charge back to an ally who's in trouble, or a great way to get into the action. It's nice that a tank finally has a way to protect an ally from a melee character that's charged onto them. Reflexive Rubber stretches his body to absorb damage before launching stored damage in the target direction, an ability you can activate to tank hits, but one you can use offensively, making Mr. Fantastic different to Doctor Strange and Magneto, as I imagine stretching body offers your team behind you protection. His ultimate is Brainiac Bounce, which leaps upwards and smashes the ground, knocking enemies up into the air within range, though if you hit an enemy, you'll leap again. You can do this up to 6 times, meaning his ultimate is a massive enemy disruption ability, locking them down for as long as you can bounce. You'll notice in the suggested combo, it mentions Rubber Grip to ensnare lone enemies, which makes me believe Distended Grip was changed from Rubber Grip to do more than just ensnare one target. Overall, his playstyle seems straightforward. Get into fights, lay down the pain, and disable priority targets like an ultimate casting Scarlet Witch or Iron Man. Protect allies with Flexible Elongation and Reflexive Rubber. Then Brainiac Bounce when all the enemies are grouped up. Out of all the heroes mentioned so far, Mr. Fantastic is what I'm most excited to play just because his animations either will be out of this world or really terrible. Out of all the supports in the game, Adam Warlock seems the most interesting to me. He revolves around regeneration, able to fully revive himself on death and revive allies with his ultimate. His passive regenerative cocoon lets him freely move as a soul and reforge his body at a chosen spot once he dies. It's unclear if this has a cooldown, but if it does, it will no doubt be long. If it doesn't, you'll most likely not be able to regenerate for a decent period, otherwise you can die then respawn over and over in the same spot. This is, however, a crazy good ability either way. It will mean you won't be caught out of a fight for too long. Quantum Magic is his left click, which lets him deal damage at range. His right click launches a cluster of the same energy at an enemy after a brief animation. It's unclear if this Quantum Magic also heals allies, but I wouldn't be surprised. Avatar Livestream targets an ally and heals them and Adam. It seems to also bounce onto nearby allies. Soul Bond grants allies in an AoE around him healing over time, but also distributes damage taken across all those hit. Meaning that if that 900 HP Hulk has taken 600 and you only hit one other player with this, you could be all down 200 life. This skill has the potential to get your allies killed if I'm reading it correctly. It also has the potential to make a death ball much harder to kill. If that fails, with his ultimate, Karmic Revival, you can revive allies around you. Allies have lower health when revived, but enjoy a period of invincibility. Meaning keeping allies on the same health evened out means they may die together, and if they do, you can revive them all together. How good Adam Warlock is as a strategist, aka support, will fully depend on the healing numbers. Does his left and right click also heal? How much damage do they do? Because his ultimate is game changing and his passive is so powerful, the rest of his kit might be under tune. We know that what makes a hero is its second to second abilities more than their ultimates. So Adam Warlock has the potential to be absolutely broken or an underused mess. Adam Warlock can also grant Star-Lord or Mantis his cocooned revival as a team-up ability, Guardian Revival. So we really need to see the limitations of it because Adam sounds insane if he can share it. It wouldn't be a Marvel game without Iron Man, Thor, Hulk and Captain America. Well, good news, he's coming. I have to imagine he would be a tank hero, putting up his shield and protecting allies. We don't have much info on him, which is why you're not seeing abilities right now. Though the miner provided notes that there are tooltip names for Diving Strike, Shield Charge, and Special Jumps. So he would have a Shield Charge to get in, a movement-based strike, and a jump. Absolute Defense Shield is something he can create, and I hope it's not just another ability like Doctor Strange's. Seeing as this is Captain America in 2099, it could be more technologically advanced than a simple shields up stance. He could be a melee brawler, though I wouldn't complain if his left click is a bouncing shield throw. Captain America also has a team up with Thor. Thor infuses Thor Force into Storm or Captain America, granting them an electrifying enhancement, most likely just bonus damage. Let me know what you want from Captain America below. Just like Captain America, we don't have much information on the Winter Soldier yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he wields firearms and uses his mechanical arm in melee, a mixed range melee DPS. I wouldn't want to see a weapon swap mechanic like the Punisher has, and I would hope he has more melee. He has a team up ability with Rocket Raccoon, the overload device which you saw with the Punisher. That device gives them both infinite ammo and faster firing, which is why I'm so confident that he uses firearms, but I really don't want to see the same weapon swap mechanic because of the hero coming up. But let me know what you want to see from him below. Blade saved Marvel movies, but we have little information on the hero. The miner has discovered that he has two primary weapons that you need to switch between, like the Punisher. Unlike the Punisher though, this is a shotgun and blade, which is why I don't want a Winter Soldier to have a similar mechanic. Blade can switch between melee and close range. He also has an ability called Swift Strike. From this limited information, we can be sure he's a DPS with ways of getting in and has a shotgun for when you want to skirt just outside of range. As a half vampire with Dracula's blade, you have to expect he has some kind of health regeneration on damage, though how they'll differentiate it from Magic's passive is unknown. Let me know what you think. Blade does get a team up with Cloak and Dagger called Lunar Force. Cloak and Dagger can inject light and dark energy into Moon Knight or Blade to create a light and dark realm where Moon Knight and Blade can become invisible. An invisible Blade seems terrifying. This is a team up that actually changes how you can play and is very interesting. I wonder how long the ability lasts. When I heard Jeff the Landshark was on the way, I was thinking tricky and hard to lock down small profile DPS. But it turns out he's a support. We don't know his exact abilities, but what we do know is that he brings splashes of joy and healing to every battle, so he does heal. However, he can morph into a voracious beast, swallowing all his foes in one giant gulp. That's most likely his ultimate, but it's unclear if this is a target point doing damage or if it's a transformation ability. The client says he has a healing bubble of some kind, so the data miner thinks he may either shoot healing bubbles at allies or make a bubble to surround an ally or himself. Either way, someone out there is getting a cute support to main. Jeff also seems to get the same team up ability with Groot as Rocket Raccoon does, able to ride on Groot's shoulders and get a 50% damage reduction. It's unclear if they can do it at the same time, but Groot does have two shoulders. He also gets powered up abilities when Lunar Snow is on the team with Chilling Charisma. Namor gets a bonus ability, but it's unclear what Jeff gets. What would you like to see Jeff do ability wise? We don't know a whole lot about Psylocke, but based on her description, she's going to be a very mobile DPS that utilizes her Psy weapons and mutant abilities. She can also utilize Magic's portals with Limbo's shortcut, though I'm not sure I want two mobile melee DPSs on one team like I've mentioned before. I hope she looks like Psylocke from Marvel vs. Capcom rather than the movies. Speaking of Marvel vs. Capcom, my favorite hero has been Wolverine since the game and the 90s cartoons. Yes, I didn't read the comics until much later. We didn't have any places around me that sold them. So naturally, I'm pumped to play as Wolverine in Rivals. I'm scared though that they'll make him a tank with absolutely no damage. Like Hulk, who hits like a wet noodle. Based on Wolverine's description, he may have a Berserker Rage, which means he may do some serious damage in that mode, but probably nothing outside of it. He has a healing factor and adamantium body and claws, so he'll no doubt be a melee tank. Just what manner of tank? I hope for a low health tank around 500 HP with super high natural healing that offsets the 400 less HP than the Hulk. However, I want him to be able to skip around the battlefield with Berserker Barrage and deal some serious damage. We thought it was odd that Magic could only use Limbo's shortcut with Black Panther, but seems like she can do so with Wolverine as well, meaning Wolverine can get his tanky butt into the front lines easier. So what do you hope for Wolverine in terms of skills? I really don't know what to make of the Invisible Woman. The question is, will she be a support or tank? I'm leaning towards support, but putting up walls seem to be a tank thing in Marvel Rivals. No doubt she'll have some kind of advanced invisibility, maybe being able to permanently be invisible, meaning that Moon Knight will counter her. All we know is that she can put up walls and stealth. Will she be melee though? What do you think she'll be able to do? It's hard to say with a character like her. The Thing finishes off the Fantastic Four's roster. He is, without a doubt, going to be a tank, or Vanguard as Rival puts it. He's going to shield allies and be hard to bring down. That's all we know about him. He'll no doubt insert "it's clobbering time" somewhere, hopefully as a power-up ultimate. What would you like to see though? Finally, we have Iron Fist, the latest to be worked on hero. It seems like he will be a martial arts hero, meaning melee. I'd expect him to be DPS, but wouldn't be surprised if they throw a spanner in and make him support. There are references to Jeet Kune Do in the files, which have different effects if used on the ground or mid-air, meaning he may be very mobile and utilize the air as a martial artist. Hopefully he'll be a lot more potent than his Netflix adaptation, though it is a different wielder of the title this time. And those are all the leaked heroes. What do you think? What are you most excited for? Let me know below. Like mentioned, take all of this with a pinch of sugar as everything is subject to change, but it's fun speculating. For everything Marvel Rivals and RPG, you're in the right place. Ciao friends.